I call to order this hearing on case number G 2023-09 BC involving book title Melissa's George Story by Alex Gino. My name is Dr. Bessie Jackson. I'm the hearing agent for this case. Pursuant to section 1006.28 Florida Statute and other applicable law, each party will have an adequate and fair opportunity to be heard and to present evidence. I will listen to all the evidence presented by both sides of this case, and I will prepare a recommended order that will be submitted to the school board. At this hearing, each party will have 1 hour to present their case, which includes an opening statement, presenting evidence, questioning witnesses, and closing statement. With the exception of irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious evidence, I will accept all other evidence of a nature commonly relied upon by a reasonable, prudent person in the conduct of their affairs. Any part of the evidence may be presented to me in written form. All testimony should be under oath. Hearsay evidence may only be used for the purpose of supplementing or explaining other evidence. At this time, would each party to this case and their witness please come to the mic and state their name for the record. Please remain standing after you have done so for the swearing in. Please come to a mic, all parties. I'm not really sure what you mean, but where to go. Any mic, it doesn't matter.
Crystal Marule.
Yes, my name is Susan Siegel for the respondent.
I need all witnesses to please come forth to a mic, please. State your name and remain standing.
Patty Duval.
Amanda Swall.
Heather Harbor.
Garrett Jones.
Kevin Berry.
Thank you. Would you raise your right hands, please? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Dr. Miro, at this time, you may begin, and your time has started. Your 1 minute, 1 hour.
Now it's just opening statement.
Okay, yes, you could start, but then you have 1 hour to present all opening statement, witnesses, testimonies.
My opening statement. No book that normalizes the use of pornography or dirty magazines is appropriate in the K-5 environment. Any administrator who says differently should be fired and kept away from children. That being said, I remind you that as per the Department of Education Library, Media, and Instructional Material Training, slide 38, parents that are challenging or objecting to materials should not have to prove that those materials are objectionable. Instead, the individuals that chose the materials must be prepared to defend the educational value of the materials if needs arise. That's the end of my opening statement.
Thank you. You may begin with your witnesses. Oh, sorry. You go ahead, attorney. Yes, sorry.
Is this my hour?
She has to open a statement. We'll take away from her time.
You'll stop the clock for me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Jackson, Dr. Marule, and folks in the audience. This hearing is not about a book that is used for instruction. It is merely available in the library of several elementary schools and middle schools. It is not on a preferred reading list. It is not used for any classroom instruction at all. It's just available to be checked out of the library. The book involves a fourth grader who everyone thinks is a boy, but who herself thinks she's a girl. It's a poignant story about a little girl and how she can grow and learn and be able to understand and express herself. There is no pornography in the book. If Dr. Marule objects to the word pornography, I would suggest then our Florida statutes are pornographic, as is the dictionary, which, like some counties, we ought to remove from the shelves. There's no depiction of sexual acts. Again, it's just about ideology, not about the content of the book. This book is available for children in our district who may be in the same uncomfortable predicament as Melissa. This book is about transgender, and Dr. Marule's objection form indicates that that's incorrect medical terminology, but transgender people have been around for a long time. Even when I was a little girl in the early 50s, there was a transgender woman named Christine Jorgensen who had been a man and gone to Denmark and changed and came back to the United States and was a singer and actor. That was the first I ever knew that that could happen, but it didn't certainly change my life or the lives of anybody else around. The book, it's not a widespread condition, but it does exist, and the book will, Patty Duvall, who is our media specialist at the district level, will testify it's been checked out a number of times at the different schools, but not a lot. Maybe one school, 8/100ths of 1% of the time. So there is some interest in this district with some children who may have the same feelings and need to find out that they are not alone in the world. One of the goals of our district is to teach children to read. There was a study in Texas of 8th grade teachers who found that their students were not reading books. So what they did was they started a study where they got rid of all assigned books and brought into the library young adult novels and other books designed for young adults and said to the kids, read, enjoy the reading. And what happened over 4 years is interesting. The children reported becoming better people. They began to be more empathetic, less judgmental, more likely to seek multiple viewpoints, morally stronger, and happier. They reported that the characters' questionable decisions were in fact to them cautionary tales, not narratives for them to make those same decisions. They found the concept that they might do that laughable, and this is 400 8th graders studied over 4 years. The books help them to see consequences of problematic decisions and language. Bad words and disturbing scenes simply fed better conversations and relationships. That's what we're trying to do in helping our children grow in this district. And as shown in the Texas study, it certainly worked with a number of children of the 8th grade level in Texas, and we would contend that permitting children to read in our district is likewise. Dr. Marule would, if she does not want her child to read any given book, all she has to do is tell us, I don't want my child reading this book, and we will make sure that book is not available to her child to check out. But she should not be permitted to come in here and tell us what my daughter's child cannot read or anybody else's child cannot read. That is a parental right of my daughter to make a decision about what her child should read, just like it's a parental right of Dr. Marule to decide what her child could read. Parental rights do go both ways. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Moore, time has been reset.
Thank you. So at the heart of the matter, it's not what my opinion is, nor is it what Ms. Siegel's opinion is, or what she wants her children to read. There's an established state criteria by which media specialists must be making the selection for the books that are both in the classroom and in the library. And as there seems to be some confusion about what that selection criteria is, I would like to review the training manual that all media specialists had to review so that it's clear to everybody here as they make their judgments based on the criteria, not based on personal opinions. So what I'm sharing with you on the slides is Exhibit 2. It's the Library Media Instructional Materials training that all media specialists had to attend and partake in before they could be part of the selection process for books that are in the library. What I'm going to read to you while I show you the slides is the accompanying transcript. I will not be presenting the entire thing because not all of it is relevant, but I will be highlighting those pieces that are relevant to this case in the selection of this text. Slide 1, welcome to the Library, Media, and Instructional Materials Training. This training is to assist librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved with the selection and maintenance of school district library materials. This training also provides assistance to reviewers of instructional materials and was created by Florida stakeholders for Florida school districts. There are 4 main purposes to this training. Part 1 discusses the criteria for the selection of library materials and discusses the requirements of many Florida statutes. Part 2 and 3 of the training are for library media specialists regarding collection policies and selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. And Part 4 of the training is to assist reviewers of instructional materials. So the first 3 parts apply to selecting library media materials, and Part 4 has some overlap, which I'll get to. The following slide, criteria for selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. We are going to begin with Part 1, criteria for selection and maintenance of library materials and reading lists. The primary objective of the Library Media Center is to implement, enrich, and support the educational program of the school. The Library Media Center shall provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty with diversity of appeal and with representation of different points of view. In 2022, Section 1006.29 was amended by House Bill 1467 to require the Department of Education to develop an online training program for librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library collections and materials and reading lists. This is that online training. Beginning January 1st, 2023, this training must be taken annually by such persons before reviewing and selecting library materials. Library materials and materials on a reading list must meet several statutory requirements. Here and on the next few slides, we'll discuss what Florida statute requires. Materials must be 1, free of pornography, and all materials prohibited under Statute 847.012 of the Florida Statutes are not permitted in a school library or media center. 2, materials must be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented. And finally, materials must be appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials are used and made available. Since my challenge comes under bullet points 2 and 3, I'm going to skip the descriptions of pornography because I agree there's no explicit pornography in this text. Moving to bullet point 2, the second and third criteria, as listed on slide 6, referred to in Statute 1006.40 Florida Statutes, states that materials must be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material. Media specialists should also consider, at a minimum, the age, maturity level, and grade level of students with access to the materials. Media specialists should consider factors such as the degree to which the material will be supplemented or explained by classroom instruction, the educational purposes of the material with priority given to materials aligned to state standards, as well as the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination. Media specialists should also, let me scroll down, sorry. Media specialists should also consider student interest and the need of their specific school population when choosing materials. Materials that are neither pornographic nor prohibited by Section 847.012 Florida Statute may still be inappropriate for students. Media specialists should always err on the side of caution when selecting materials. It's good practice to assess whether or not you, as the adult making a book selection decision, would be comfortable reading aloud the material in question in a public meeting. If you would not be comfortable reading the material in a public setting, then you should lean towards not making the material available in a school library for children. Some of these requirements will be addressed later in this training. The criteria for selection of library materials, reading list materials, and instructional materials is found in additional statutes. Many of the requirements are the same as in the above slides. Florida statutes additionally dictate that materials adhere to several requirements listed in Section 1006.34, subparagraph 2b. This section discusses using the following considerations in the selection of library media materials: the age of the students who have access to the material, the educational purpose to be served by the materials, the degree to which the material would be supplemented and explained as part of normal classroom instruction, consideration of the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of students in the state, and any material containing pornography or otherwise prohibited by Statute 847.012 may not be used or made available within any public school. Additionally, Section 1006.28, subparagraph 2D2 requires each district school board to adopt procedures for developing library media collections. The procedure must address the following criteria. 1, book selection must meet the criteria in Statute 1006.40, subparagraphs 3D. Consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. Library media center collections based on reader interest, support of state standards and curriculum, and the academic needs of the students and faculty. The regular removal of books based on physical condition, rate of circulation, and if I recall, the rate of circulation was 0.08%, if that's what I heard. Alignment to state standards, relevancy to curriculum, and out-of-date content. The Parents' Bills of Rights are very important in Florida. The Parental Bill of Rights states that parents have the right to direct the education of care of his or her minor child. Taking this into consideration, districts must have policies in place to ensure that parents have the opportunity to review library materials, including classroom libraries, and parents must be informed of these district policies. Be aware that each school district is required to provide parents access to any book in a school library if the district receives a written request. And as a reminder, a parent may access the department's parental rights page to share concerns. Please share this link with your school community. It is the responsibility of each media specialist to know their district's challenge material policy. Section 1006.28, subparagraphs 2A2, Florida statute states that each district school board must adopt a policy regarding an objection by a parent or a resident of the county to the use of a specific material, which clearly describes the process to handle all objections and provides for resolution. We encourage districts to adopt robust policies to carefully consider objections. Districts may wish to consider including specific details about committees, responsibilities, and meeting timelines. Districts may also consider having an objection process in place prior to the purchase of any new materials. The second section, I'm not going to go through slide by slide, but it goes over the collection development policies, and it provides guidelines for selecting the material, many of which were just presented. I do want to stop for a moment on the library media specialist slide here, 22. In order to select materials for a school library or media center, a school district employee must possess certain qualifications. In addition to a professional license, he or she must be certified as an educational media specialist. A person qualifies as a certified educational media specialist in one of two ways. One way is that an individual has an undergraduate or graduate major in library science or educational media, or has a bachelor's degree with at least 30 semester hours in library science or educational media. The second way is that a certified educator adds the educational media specialist certificate to their credential by passing the educational media specialist exam. Section 1006.28, subparagraphs 4F, Florida statute states school principals are responsible for overseeing compliance with the school district procedures for selecting school library media center materials at the school to which they are assigned. Again, we will now discuss part 3 of the training, which is selection and maintenance of school library materials. I'm not speaking about a book list or a classroom instruction. This is pertaining to school library materials. Criteria for selection of school library materials. Florida Statute 1006.282D requires that school districts must adopt procedures to ensure that library and media center collections support academic standards. They must support academic standards and curriculum. They have to support the academic needs of students and faculty and are based on the interest of readers. Each of these requirements is important to the creation and maintenance of a school library media center within an environment capable of supporting students in their academic pursuits and creating lifelong readers. When evaluating your collection, you may wish to ask the following questions. Does the collection meet the current and future needs of the school population and align with the curricular and instructional needs? Does the collection align with the mission and vision of the school district or the district or school? Has the collection been developed in compliance with Florida statutes, see State Board of Education rules and school district policies? Planning for the future is a best practice of collection and selection policies. As a media specialist, you should consider a 5-year purchase plan that takes into account planning for future collection needs. When choosing material for your library media center, choose materials that are age appropriate by taking into consideration the ages, grade levels, levels of maturity, reading levels, and special curricular needs and programs at your school district. Materials should reflect all levels of ability from struggling readers through those that are advanced. Special curricular needs may include material for English language learners, gifted learners, and schools may have specialized programs such as technology magnets and advanced programs. Section 1006.282D2 FS states that consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders is required. Consultation with stakeholders and professional periodicals can provide information helpful to ensuring the selection criteria set out in the statute, rule, and policy are met. Professional review journals typically include a summary of the plot, an appraisal of the literary quality, and a recommended age or grade range. Best practices are to consult multiple professional review journals. And while the law requires consultation of peer reviews, districts should consider the consultation of crowdsourced reviews as well. All right. I'm going to go forward for the sake of time. And I want to go to the 4th bullet point. Part 4, instructional material reviewers. This training is also designed to assist reviewers in complying with the criteria for evaluating and recommending instructional materials for adoption as set forth in 1006.312. This training will provide a brief overview of the requirements for instructional reviewers. There is some overlap between the selection criteria for instructional and library materials. We will start this portion of the training with the areas where there's overlap and discuss the selection criteria for instructional materials later in this portion of the training. It is important to note that this training does not replace the requirement for state and school district instructional material reviewers found in Statute 1006, subparagraph 29.5, state and school district instructional materials. State and school district instructional materials reviewers must also complete the department's training for instructional material reviews. All materials in public schools, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or instructional materials, must include consideration of the following factors: avoiding the use of any solicited theories or strategies that may lead to student indoctrination. Meetings for the purpose of selecting instructional materials must be open to the public, including parents, and consultation with school community and stakeholders, including parents, is required in the purchasing of new library materials. The age of students with access to the materials, the educational purpose, the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction, and consideration of the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of students. In addition, all material used in public schools must be free of pornography and free of materials prohibited under Statute 847.012. I will stop there because the rest of this slide pertains to instructional materials, not library materials. But everything I've presented to date up to this moment is guidelines and training for the selection of materials that are sitting in a school library. I will carry on. I have another presentation.
Dr. Jackson, if Dr. Marule is waiting for me to question her as on cross-examination, I'm assuming that's her testimony. I have no questions.
I'm not done my testimony.
Okay, I wasn't sure why there was a pause, and I just wanted to...
I was transitioning to my other presentation. Thank you. Okay, so here today we're to talk about the book George, or Melissa, formerly known as George, written by Alex Gino. This is the author of this text. Now, applying the criteria for selection of library materials, which I just reviewed in detail with everybody, under bullet points 2 and 3, it needs to be suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the materials presented. And it needs to be appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials are used and made available. So let's talk about appropriate for age and grade level. Again, let me remind you that these considerations should include student ability to comprehend material, the degree to which the material will be explained or supplemented by classroom instruction, the educational purpose of the material, the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination, age and grade level of students, and maturity of students, and that we should err on the side of caution. Let's talk about the intended audience. According to the peer reviews and even the author himself, this book was intended for middle grades. The cover, in the FACs, at the back of the book, there's a question to the author. It says the cover says that this book was originally published as George. What's that all about? The author answers, when I started writing this book, I casually called it Girl George as a play on a musician popular in the 80s, Boy George. It was a joke to myself for a book I never really thought would get published. There weren't any middle grade books about transgender kids out there, and I didn't expect mine to be one of the first. Surprise, it was. His intention is for middle grades. When we're looking at the appropriateness for the grade level, again, we're supposed to be looking at professional peer-reviewed journals for the age and grade level of recommendations, as well as crowdsourced reviews. So this is one of the peer reviews that would have been consulted in selection for this text, and I will be asking Ms. Swall later if this was one of the ones that was consulted. And even here, a review flags and says, however, the writing is too simplistic for middle school, yet too mature for upper elementary. This book would be best suited in the hands of a counselor to reach the proper audience. I would like to know if that was taken into consideration. Pornography, let's talk about pornography. But before I talk about pornography, let me just remind you of the ages of the characters in this book. George is 10, page 129. Besides, they're only 10 years old. He and his friends are in 4th grade. Quote, Miss Udell leaned against her giant desk reading to her 4th grade class, page 11. Scott, his older brother, Scott was George's older brother. He's a high school freshman, so I assume he's ages 14 or 15. Let me remind you of what that actually looks like. Here to the left is a picture of my 2 children on their first day of 4th and 5th grade. These are the children who could be picking up this book and reading about pornography. Look at them in their eyes and think if they should be presented with a normalization of pornography and if you think that's acceptable to be in a school library. Then look to the picture to the right. This is a picture of my son first day of school in 9th grade when he was 14 years old. To insinuate that all 14-year-olds are looking at pornography and sharing it with their little brother is repulsive. References to dirty magazines. Page 8. That's it, Scott grinned, oblivious to George's panic. That's my little bro, growing up and looking at dirty magazines. Oh, George said out loud. She knew what dirty magazines were. She almost laughed. The girls in the magazines she was looking at wore a lot more clothes than that, even the ones at the beach. George relaxed, at least a little. References to porn, page 141. Nah, I found them this weekend. I knew Mom was upset about something, and then I saw the bag sitting on her bed. Dude, I thought you had porn or something in there, so I took a peek, just to find out what kind of stuff my little bro was into. Full stop. Full stop. Books referencing pornography or normalizing that 14-year-olds are talking to 10-year-olds about their sexual interests and what they like to watch on porn has no place in a K-5 media center. And this argument or conversation and challenge should be over right now. And if you think differently, you should not be in charge of selecting the books for our children. This is not the type of curiosity that we should be awakening in children that are 10 years old or younger. Sorry, the computer froze. Is there tech help? The computer froze. Can you pause the clock, ma'am? Let me see if I can close it and restart it. I'd appreciate it if you'd give me some minutes back on the clock there. Ma'am, you haven't stopped the clock yet. Are you able to? Will you be able to give me minutes back? It's not, something's not right. Because when I try to click onto the slide, it's not showing up there.
Okay, it's still in that presenter mode.
I'll exit out at everything. Can you take note of how much minutes I'm losing? It was
Okay, so
working
it's
fine.
yeah, it's still in the split screen mode, right? And are you doing it from here?
I did. I can change this back to maybe duplicate. Maybe that'll be different.
Yeah. Okay, so now it's showing the screen again.
No, why is it doing that? Okay.
Can you do it without your notes?
Yes, sir. This is
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, how much? 4, please. Okay, turning to the topic of indoctrination. Let's highlight the text, pages 46, 47, 141, where it discusses surgical transitioning. The interviewer said that Tina had been born a boy and then asked her whether she had the surgery. The woman replied that she was a transgender woman and that what she had between her legs was nobody's business but her and her boyfriend's. So George knew it could be done. A boy could become a girl. She had since read on the internet that you could take girl hormones that would change your body and you could get a bunch of different surgeries if you wanted them and had the money. This was called transitioning. You could even start before you were 18 with pills called androgen blockers that stop the boy hormones already inside of you from turning you into a man's. But for that, you needed your parents' permission. So I figured you were gay, but I didn't think you were like that. Scott popped a corn fritter into his mouth. So like, do you want to? He made a gesture with his 2 fingers like a pair of scissors. Go all the way. George squeezed her legs together. Maybe someday, she said. Weird, but it kind of makes sense, no offense, but you don't make a very good boy. I know. Avoiding unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination, the educational purpose to be served by the material, the degree to which this material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction, and the material should be free of pornography. We should also be given priority to the selection of materials that align with Next Generation Sunshine State standards, the degree to which that material will be supplemented and explained by mature classroom instruction as part of a normal classroom instructional program, and any instructional material containing pornography should be prohibited. Again, collections must support academic standards and curriculum and follow Florida statutes. So let's take a look at a few Florida statutes. HB 7 says, Statute 1006.342B recommends for the adoption only those instructional materials aligned with the Next Generational Sunshine State standards provided for in S 1003.41. Instructional materials recommended by each reviewer shall be, to the satisfaction of each reviewer, accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography and material prohibited under 847, and suited to the student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented. HB 1069. It shall be the policy of every public K-12 educational institution that is provided or authorized by the Constitution and the laws of Florida that a person's sex is an immutable biological trait and that it is false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such person's sex. The entire book is written with the feminine pronoun to refer to George, a male. In addition, in required instruction as stipulated in HB 1069, throughout instruction in acquired immune deficiency syndrome, sexually transmitted diseases, or health education, when such instruction in course material contains instruction in human sexuality, a school shall, A, classify males and females as provided in statute 1000.21, paragraph 9, and teach that biological males impregnate biological females by fertilizing the female egg with male sperm, that the female then gestates the offspring, and that these reproductive roles are binary, stable, and unchangeable. Additionally, HB 1069, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in pre-kindergarten through grade 8. Again, full stop. When we look at the criteria for the selection of library materials, it says priority shall be given to the selection of materials that align with the Next Generation of Sunshine State standards, that the educational purpose to be served by the material is clear, and it should be considered the degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction, avoiding unsolicited theories that may lead to student indoctrination. HB 1069 prohibits the instruction of sexual orientation and the gender ideologies in grade K to 8. Not only is this book not aligned with state standards and statutes, it is in direct opposition. Let me turn now to parental rights. Let me give you some quotes from the book that addresses parental authority in the opinion of the author. What right does she, regarding his mom, have to take them away from you? He answers, sometimes transgender people don't get rights. George had read on the internet about transgender people being treated unfairly because his mom took away magazines from him. Parental authority, she's allowed to do that. And to mix that with transgender rights is ridiculous. George toyed with telling Mom about the plan, but she remembered Mom's words, one step at a time. She would tell Mom about her adventures when Mom was ready. At the end of the book, again, I already mentioned that there's the FAQs, and there's a question to the author saying, I think I might be transgender or gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, etc. What should I do? The response, first of all, be proud that you're figuring out who you are, and remember that you don't need all the answers today, and the answers can change. If you can access the internet, you can read up on as well as connect with other LGBTQIAP+ people. The first recommendation here is to go to the internet to direct elementary school students who are dealing with a very serious issue to the internet. You might be able to find a youth group in your area or an online community. Check the shelves of your local library. There might be some great books there, and if there are, you might talk more directly with your librarian. Next main recommendation is go on to community online groups, go to the library and to talk to the librarian when a child is suffering with body dysmorphia. Librarians love to connect people with the right resources. It's literally their job, and they often know about local groups. You might want to tell important people in your life, or maybe everyone in your life, or maybe no one, at least not right now. All of these answers are valid. You're under no obligation to tell anyone anything. The choice is up to you. But remember to be safe. That can mean thinking carefully about who you tell and when, as well as being ready to answer questions, including some silly ones. At the same time, sometimes you will be surprised. When faced with the choice between holding on to old beliefs and holding on to family and friends, many people choose the people they love. The path can be rocky, though, and it can take away more time than you think it should. Make choices that are right for you. Never was it mentioned to speak to a parent. A parent was never mentioned as a suggestion. Go to the internet, go to your librarian, go to an online community, but not to your parents. This is not the appropriate message to send children in the K-5 environment who might be suffering from this issue. Another question, or a continuation of that question, a continuation of his response. If you aren't sure if there's someone in your life who you can talk to, and you want or need to talk to someone, you can call the Trevor Lifeline anytime with a phone number. Trained counselors are available 24/7 to support young people who are in crisis, who are feeling suicidal, or who are in the need of a safe and judgment-free place to talk. For more information, visit the Trevor Project. Hotlines aren't just for other people, they're there for you. Know that there's a community out here ready and waiting to love and cherish you. There's a fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children. Providing students materials, books, forms that direct them to others and to counselors without consultation is in direct conflict with state statutes of parental rights. And let me talk a minute about the Trevor Project. When you go to the Trevor Project, the very first thing that you see is a message of how you can quickly escape and hide your navigation to this webpage. It's facilitating secrecy. It also provides access to counselors within minutes. And it's intended, according to their own webpage, for ages 13 to 24-year-olds. Again, I'm challenging this book in a K-5 library. Let me then turn also to, the school can get itself in a lot of trouble, I believe, by recommending or offering students access to therapists under the age of 13, because the Florida statutes dictate that the age for outpatient diagnostic and evaluation services or crisis intervention therapy and counseling services is for minors 13 or older, not younger. So to give access to children under the age of 13 to therapists without their parents' knowledge is in direct contradiction to Florida Statutes 394.478. I'm going to quickly go over some other problematic content, not that I think it's necessary, because if the arguments aren't clear enough to those sitting here, they should not be the ones making the decisions. But let's talk about the quote on page 105. George had been reading websites about transitioning since Scott told her how to clear the web browser history on Mom's computer. Why are we promoting hiding things, our children hiding things online from our parents? And then let's just talk about the few I gave up after a while because I had a slide full of them, but there's plenty of them, about the sexist and sex stereotypical references in this book. We've just spent 2 generations of women fighting not to have stereotypes about how we look and how we behave, and this book is nothing but indoctrination back into those old stereotypes that we've spent 2 generations fighting against. Take in point, the whole room was about being a boy, and when boys were in there, they liked to talk about what was between their legs. I didn't even know you had any skirts, said George. I don't wear them to school. Boys are dirty and try to look up them. I'd never try to look up your skirt. Of course not, you're not a boy. I don't think boys looking up girls' skirts is really a problem in the K-5 environment, and if there is, there's far bigger issues. George wanted to be pink so that people would know that she is a girl. Seriously? Gym class meant boys yelling at her to run faster or to throw the ball harder. You're disgusting, said Mom, resignation in her voice. I'm a teenage boy, said Scott. What do you expect? George leaned against the chain link fence, watching some girls from her class jump rope. She knew the rhymes they sang, but no one would ask her to join. Boys didn't play jump rope. What? Hey, Rick, it looks like someone's finally starting to grow some balls. Jeff thumped his right fist into his left palm. There was nothing George dreaded more than when boys talked about what was in her underpants. She wondered where she could find a safe space like that and if there would be other girls like her there. Maybe they could talk about makeup together. Maybe they could even try some on. When girls dress up, they wear skirts. I have a lot to teach you about being a girl. And remember how I wanted to be a ballerina and it drove Scott crazy because he said I couldn't because I was a boy? And then I just want to turn to this very problematic text on 186 to 187. Can you hand me my printout right there? I just want to remind you, this is the person who wrote this text. And if this doesn't make you feel uneasy, then your parental judgment needs to be recalibrated. So Kelly turned cartwheels across the carpet. Half the time, her skirt would flip right over her belly, leaving her pink underwear showing. She would scamper down and smooth out her skirt, but that didn't stop her from trying again. Melissa was looking at her reflection from every angle she could. She faced away from the big mirror and held a hand of mirrors so she could see her back. Kelly, Melissa stopped her friend while she was upright. There's just one more thing. Melissa, stop worrying, you look perfect. It's just, I'm wearing boys' underpants. Melissa felt the wide band of elastic around her waist that held up her white boys' briefs. No one would be able to see them, but she would know all day that they were there. Ew, yuck, pull them off. Kelly was already at her dresser drawer. She handed Melissa a pair of light pink underwear covered in tiny red hearts. They were small and light. You can have them, don't worry, they're clean. Are you sure, Melissa asked? Of course, I have too many pairs anyway. Melissa turned around and began to take off the purple skirt. Oh, you don't have to take it off. You can change under it. Skirts are awesome like that. Oh, right. Melissa took off her own underwear, stepped into Kelly's, and pulled it up under her skirt. Other than the coolness of the fabric on her skin, she could barely tell she was wearing anything at all. Okay, so in summary, is this suited to student needs and appropriate for age and grade level? The considerations for inclusion include student ability to comprehend the material. The topics about the proposed theory that gender is separable from biological sex is complex and not easily understood, especially not in the K-5 environment, and according to the state statutes, it's fallacious. The degree to which the material will be explained or supplemented by classroom instruction. According to the state statutes and the Florida Best Standards, the contents of this text will not be explained, supplemented by classroom instruction because they are prohibited topics of instruction. The educational purpose of the material. There is no educational purpose of this material at the K-5 level, as it does not align with the best standards and benchmarks and focuses on a topic that is prohibited from classroom instruction according to state statutes. The accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination. Presenting gender ideology from a one-sided perspective with a positive affect is propaganda and can lead to indoctrination. Additionally, the sexist comments and the reinforcement of negative sexist stereotypes makes this book inappropriate. Age and grade level of students. The author makes it clear that his target audience is the middle grades. A peer reviewer from Mackin suggested that the writing is too simplistic for middle school, yet too mature for upper elementary. This book would be best suited in the hands of a counselor to reach the proper audience. In addition, this book has references that normalize porn and dirty magazines, topics which should not be presented to elementary students under any context. Lastly, the maturity of the students. Students K-5 do not have the maturity or background knowledge necessary to engage in the ideological topics presented in this book. In addition, this book has references to porn and dirty magazines, topics which should not be presented to elementary school students under any context. Lastly, when you're guided to err on the side of caution, given the concerns raised by peer reviewers, the obvious opposition to state standards, the curriculum of required instruction, the age-appropriate references to porn and dirty magazines, caution would dictate not selecting this text. So is this book appropriate to student needs and appropriate for age and grade level? No, it is not. Okay. Now I'm done my testimony, or my whatever.
I have no questions.
What did you say?
You may call your next witness.
Oh. Okay, would Ms. Swall be able to come? I'm going to stay here so I can share slides if need be. I'm going to stay here if that's okay, so I can share slides for reference if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's a little awkward looking at her back, but as long as Ms. Swall doesn't mind. Or you can move the table over. Okay, so thank you for coming today, and I appreciate your attendance. Did you take the library media training?
Yes.
So are you familiar with all the criteria and guidelines that I went over?
Yes, I am.
Do you agree that they apply to selection of library materials?
I believe there's an overlap of instructional and library materials.
That would be in part 3, right? The final slide. But the sections 1, 2, and 3? Or, I'm sorry, part 4 is the overlap. Do you want me to re-show it to you?
Yeah.
Part 1, criteria for selection of library materials and reading lists, collection development policies for library media specialists, selection and maintenance of library media materials for library media specialists. And part 4 is the part that has overlap. Would you like me to go to the part that has overlap? Or do you agree that the first 3 parts pertain to the library media selection?
Can you read those, Ms. Wall?
Yes, I'm reading.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, those pertain to library materials.
Okay, correct. So you agree that the first 3 sections and the ones that I highlighted beforehand, plus the one that overlaps in part 4, pertain to library media selections? This is the overlap. This is the only one that I presented that had overlap. So do you agree that everything up to and including the slide has to pertain with the selection criteria for what's in a media at a library?
No, I don't believe it all pertains to library materials.
What does not pertain to selection of library materials that I showed on all the slides up to this slide 31?
The degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction.
Do you not think that so are you disagreeing that it should be considered? Are you disagreeing that, do you see it stated there as a common selection criteria, correct?
For instructional materials, comma, library materials, and reading list.
So it said, let me read to you again the transcript for the recording of this presentation, the training. All materials in public schools, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or in instructional materials, must include consideration of the following factors: avoiding the use of any unsolicited theories or strategies that may lead to student indoctrination. Meetings for the purpose of selecting instructional materials must be open to the public, including parents, and consultation with school community stakeholders, including parents, is required in the purchasing of new library materials. The age of the students with access to the materials, the educational purpose, the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction. Do you agree that that's what this says?
My interpretation is that there's an and or there, if it's instructional material versus if it's library material for independent reading versus something that's going to be used instructionally.
Let me clarify that. Going back to this section.
Dr. Jackson, she is testifying now, not asking a question.
I-
She's now wanting to clarify, and that is her testimony, not a question.
I'll rephrase the question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let me review the prior slide. Instructional material reviewers. Common selection criteria for instructional materials, library materials, and reading lists. And let me read again the intro from the training transcript. All materials in public schools, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or in instructional materials, must include considerations of the following factors. Do you agree that that is what the training says?
That's what it says.
So do you agree then that you need to take into consideration the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction?
I don't agree with that.
Is that your personal opinion?
She has a right to her, she's answering you. She-
Oh, that's your personal opinion. In your role as a media specialist, where you shall apply these selection criteria to the selection of materials, does your personal opinion impede you from applying the criteria?
No, I don't use my personal opinions on topics or materials for library use.
So are you following the guidelines that are dictated by the state in your training to take into consideration the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction?
I don't manage classroom materials.
Let me repeat. All materials in public schools, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or in instructional materials, must include considerations of the following factors. Ma'am, is she allowed to feed answers to the witness? I see you mouthing answers.
I would object to Dr. Marule continuing to badger this witness on the same question over and over again.
I don't-
She's answered it, and,
Objection to
you
her
know,
objection.
ma'am,
I approach
it's
it.
not appropriate for you to speak when I'm trying to make my objection.
I object to her objection. I'm interviewing the media specialist who has followed training, and I'm reading the training, and it is extremely relevant if the media specialist who took this training and who is charged with the responsibility of applying the selection criteria to the selection of the books in the K-5 library, that she is applying these guidelines, and she is admitting her own opinion if she disagrees with this guideline. So it is extremely relevant, if, despite her disagreement with it, if she can apply it to the selection of library materials.
Dr. Muro, could we ask her questions in a yes, no answer, and if it calls for an explanation, we'll see if that's allowed. Please, let's go.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes or no, does the training stipulate that all materials in a public school, whether found in a library, included on a reading list, or instructional materials, must include consideration of the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction?
Yes,
Did you apply that criteria, yes or no, to the selection of this book, Melissa?
I did not select this book.
Applying that criteria to this book, does this book meet that criteria?
It meets the criteria for a library material, not instructional.
So can you then describe the degree to which this material will be supplemented by classroom instruction?
No, it's not used for instructional material.
So all materials in public schools, whether found in a library, including on a reading list, or in instructional materials, must include consideration of the following factors: the degree to which the material will be supplemented by classroom instruction. So the degree to which it will be supplemented to classroom instruction, according to your opinion, is 0. Is that correct?
Objection now, Your Honor. She's gone over this a fourth or fifth time. She's answered the question. It's appropriate for Dr. Marule to move on to another topic.
It's abstained, Dr. Muro. She has told you that instructional material and library materials are very much different, so we can go to another question.
Right. I just want to highlight the fact that what she says is not supported by the training.
That's argument, Dr.
Yeah. Please, we'll move on.
All right. Can you tell me when this book was acquired?
It came with the opening of the Terwilliger Media Center. It was purchased as a bulk new school, new library purchase.
What year was that?
So that would have been 2021.
Did you have stakeholders input on this?
No, I did not procure the purchase. I did not
Were you
create
not the
purchase
media
order.
specialist at the time?
I was, but because this was a new school, and it was a new library that was handled by the district.
So who would have been in charge of selecting this material
The district,
specifically? Would that be Ms. Duval?
yes.
I'll save those questions for her then, thank you. Typically, when you have stakeholder input, if stakeholders object to something on the acquisition list, what is the procedure to follow?
If a stakeholder objects to something on a purchase, on a future purchase, so we put out, we share the purchase order of what will potentially be purchased. It is not required to be approved by stakeholders. They can share their input is all that is asked.
So how do you take into consideration stakeholder input?
In the form that is shared for stakeholder input, it states to reach out and share your input.
And if there's a challenge or if somebody objects, does that influence your selection behavior at all?
Yeah, I would take it into consideration and have a discussion.
Is that the process you're currently following at Terwilliger?
Yes,
And when you had challenges to the stakeholder process currently and people objected, how was that taken into consideration?
no one shared their input.
Okay, let the record state there were several parents who participated in the stakeholder input.
They stated their objection, but they did not share feedback.
There was no spot to put feedback.
You have my email.
Really making it easy on parents, I see. Okay, okay. So at what age do you think it's appropriate to normalize the use of pornography and dirty magazines with children?
Dr. Miro, we have not saying that this is pornography or dirty. This is just a hearing. It has not been recommended order.
It's not pornography. It normalizes pornography. Let me read the text.
No, the question that you asked, you said, how do you agree with it? The
Let me rephrase if you don't mind, I'll rephrase.
Thank you.
That's it, Scott grinned, oblivious to George's panic. That's my little bro, growing up and looking at dirty magazines. Oh, George said out loud. She knew what dirty magazines were. She almost laughed. The girls in magazines she was looking at wore a lot more clothes than that, even the ones at the beach. George relaxed at least a little. Do you think it's appropriate, this conversation, to be held with a 10-year-old?
The text does not explicitly state that it's pornographic or that there is nudity. It could be a swimsuit magazine, JCPenney catalog that they're referring to. It doesn't explicitly state that.
Wait, so are you trying to say that because it doesn't define pornography, it just alludes to the fact that it's people wearing a little bit of clothing, that this is an acceptable conversation for a 10-year-old?
I'm not saying, I'm not their parent. I'm not saying what's acceptable.
Now, if a 10-year-old was reading this book and asked you, what's pornography, how would you respond?
That's not a conversation I would have with a student.
So you think this book is appropriate for K to 5?
The interest level is rated for 3 to 6, third grade through 6th grade.
That's only one criteria to look at for evaluation, correct? Okay. I would like to rest with this witness and call another witness while my time permits.
Thank you. Ms. Siegel, Attorney Siegel, would you like to cross-examine, or you want to use your hour with this witness?
No, I will go ahead and cross-examine her now.
Thank you.
Do you want the dais, or do you want this podium?
No, you could,
I'm done with this witness.
yes, I'll move it down. Thank you. Dr. Muir, you have 2 minutes, and I'm going to add on to whatever Dr. Siegel used with this, okay? All right.
Ms. Wall, if you will tell us your name, what's your occupation, and where do you work?
Amanda Swall, Terwilliger Elementary Media Specialist.
Okay. How long have you been there?
This is, I believe, my 10th year at Terwilliger.
Okay. And what are your job responsibilities?
I manage the media center. I teach media lessons to students.
When you say media lessons, what kind of lessons do you teach?
We do read-alouds, we discuss genres, parts of a book, text features.
Okay. Can students check books out of your library?
Yes, they can check.
Okay. Is there a way for you to prevent a child from checking out a book if the parent does not want the child to read that book?
Absolutely.
And what do you do?
There's a district form that they would complete, and it would be I would be notified, and it would be put in their record. And each time we access that student's record for library checkout, we would see the notice. And I'm open to any parent communicating to me what they would or would not want their child to read.
You are familiar with the book Melissa, correct?
Yes.
And you've said that it was purchased when Terwilliger moved from in-town out to Parker Road, correct?
Yes.
But you were not responsible for the selection of that particular text.
Correct.
What is an open library?
An open library is more, I think, middle and high school levels where they don't teach classes. The library is open for students to come in and out with a library pass, but I do not have an open library.
So that means if the children come to you in grades K through 5, they don't have the ability to just free range the library and pick whatever they want?
Correct. It's always with guidance with myself and my assistant.
Were you involved with the initial challenge to this book on November 28th, 2023?
Yes.
What was your involvement?
As the media specialist
Okay.
reviewer.
And was Dr. Marul at that meeting?
No.
Okay. What happened at the meeting?
Before the meeting, we each read the book in entirety, and then we had the meeting, and we discussed and looking at her concerns on the challenge review form.
Okay. Were there any members of the public present?
I believe there was.
Okay. What was the results? After your discussion, what did the committee decide to do?
To retain the book.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Attorney. Ms.
Am I allowed to
Seeger,
ask a follow-up or no?
Yes, but I'm going to tell you, you have 3 moments. So that's a total 5 minutes added to your time.
Okay.
Okay, yes, you can continue.
Could you, for the record, for all those parents that are concerned, tell me what other titles in your library contain similar references to pornography and dirty magazines?
That book has not been qualified as a dirty
No, it normalizes, it has a conversation between a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old about looking at dirty magazines. I would like to know as a parent, what other books have similar conversations between the characters about pornography and dirty magazines?
Okay.
How many other titles in your collection have those types of references or conversations?
Would you know that without reading all those books?
I would not, but I can look at the catalog records for any flags, and I could look at reviews, but I
What kind of
cannot do that
flags?
with all books.
Like, what kind of flags would you be finding or looking for?
Just topics, themes.
Do you have a flag for the theme of dirty magazines and pornography?
No.
I rest, or whatever.
Thank you. Have any follow-up, Attorney Siegel?
Yeah. Do you have children that are 14 and 9 yourself?
My own children?
Yeah, your own children?
I have a middle school and a college-age student.
Okay. Do your middle school and college-age kids, when they're fussing with each other, ever say things that taunt each other like, I'll bet you were in there, as this book said, taking a dump or reading a dirty magazine? Have they ever taunted each other that way?
We've had some raunchy conversations in the home, yes.
And that's not unusual for normal kids of the age of your children, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Opinion,
Excuse me, ma'am.
relevance.
Excuse me. Is anything that Dr. Marul read from that book something that would raise a red flag to you as a parent, that it was pornographic or leading children to an inappropriate method of behavior?
No, if my child chose to read this book, we would have conversations and open up dialogue on any of those topics.
It would not be forbidden to your children, though.
No.
Thank you very
I just object.
much.
I don't know how this has to do with applying the state criteria. She's here as a representative, as a professional who's supposed to be applying the state criteria, and these questions are all personal opinion questions, and they're not about applying the criteria.
My only comment on that is much of what Dr. Marule says is her personal opinion also. So
I'm
we're gonna
applying the
stay away
criteria
from the-
as stated.
Excuse me, ma'am, you should not interrupt the other one when we're talking, please. Thank you, ma'am. Personal opinion is one thing. She has stated personal opinion, so is this witness. That should be the end of it.
Thank you for your testimony. There's another minute added on too, so you have 6 minutes. Thank you. You have another witness,
I have
Dr.
6
Mew?
This
minutes
witness be
total?
excused?
Excuse
May
me.
she be excused?
Yes.
If you'd like to go, you may go.
What about my additional time from the computer?
I gave you 2 for that, 5 for the opening statement, and 1 minute for the witness. So you have 6 total minutes additional.
All right, I'd like to call Garrett Jones, please. Vice President Principal Garrett Jones. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for attending. I appreciate your presence. Mr. Jones, I believe you two have children, is that correct?
Yes,
What ages are they?
18, 16, and 13.
And would you find it appropriate if they brought this book home, we're talking about dirty magazines and pornography in a K-5 environment?
I think it would open up a conversation that we would have.
So you think the book is appropriate in the K-5 environment, even though it's referenced in pornography and dirty magazines?
I think in my, what I voted for was that it would be for the 3 to 5 age group.
Which would be what ages?
So that would be 8 to 10, 12?
So you think an 8-year-old would be appropriate to be reading about pornography and dirty magazines from school?
Yes.
Do you see the common selection criteria for instructional materials on the board there?
Yes.
Do you recognize that those are guidelines and the criteria that should be applied to books that are in the library at your school?
Yes.
Just talking about the degree to which the material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction, I believe that sex ed is introduced in the latter half of 5th grade, is that correct?
Yes.
Is gender identity part of that sex ed curriculum?
I'm not aware of it, if it is or not at this time.
And if it were, would that not be in violation of HB 1069?
Sorry, repeat the question?
That if it did include gender ideology or gender identity in the sex ed in 5th grade, would that not be in violation of HB 1069, which prohibits gender identity instruction in K-8?
I guess it would be.
That's correct. So do you think, to what degree then would this material be supplemented or explained by classroom instruction with regard to gender identity?
I don't understand your question.
My question is, if you cannot be teaching gender identity in K-8 and it would not be part of the curricular instruction in the 5th grade, to what degree is this book supplementing or aligning with curriculum, and or would it be discussed as part of classroom instruction?
It's not a part of classroom instruction.
So to what degree does this material, would it be supplemented and or explained by classroom instruction?
It's not supplemented. It's something that a student has the opportunity to check out, but it's not supplemented.
So 0, correct? It would not be supplemented
Yes.
or explained by classroom instruction. So on that criteria, when you need to consider if it would be supplemented or explained by classroom instruction, you would have to say it would not be. So that would be one standard of criteria that would speak to not selecting this book. Do you agree with that?
Objection. Dr. Jackson, my problem is this gentleman is an assistant principal. He is not a media specialist. So I don't think some of these questions are appropriate. Ms. Duval is here, who's a media specialist, to answer any of those questions for Dr. Marule.
I do believe that in his forms, he brought up the fact that there was sex ed in 5th grade, and that's why I'm asking him these questions, because he brought up the curricular fact of sex ed in 5th grade.
Remind you that your time has expired, so now you're on your 6 minutes that was allotted to you.
No, I'll rest in with that.
Thank you. Attorney Siegel?
Very briefly. Good afternoon. You are the assistant principal at Terwilliger, correct?
Yes.
And how long have you been with the district?
18 years.
And what did you do prior to becoming assistant principal?
I was a dean of students, a teacher for many years.
And what did you teach?
I taught civics, science, social studies, geography.
Okay. And you were not certified as a media specialist, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You were involved with the book challenge of this book, Melissa, correct?
Yes.
And your opinion was it was best suited for kids of the upper grade levels at elementary school, correct?
Correct.
You did not opine that it should not be in the library at all, did you?
No,
Okay, you didn't offer that opinion. And Dr. Marule was not present.
she was not present.
Okay. And you read the book yourself.
Yes.
I think you've indicated on your questioning by Dr. Marule that if one of your children had read the book, it might have raised topics for discussion, correct?
Correct.
It would not have made you tell him he's not allowed, or her, not allowed to read the book, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see anything in the book that you thought was pornographic?
No.
Okay. Did you see anything that described specific sexual acts?
No.
Okay. Saying the words dirty magazine, does that imply pornography to you? With two kids saying dirty magazines, is that?
I would just like to remind the witness he's sworn under testimony to tell the truth.
Dr. Burrell, that's improper. You know, she's not her place to tell witnesses what to do or not to do or to remind them. It's your place as a hearing officer. I would ask Dr. Marule to just be quiet. If she has an objection, to state the objection and the grounds.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you this. Does the fact that the words dirty magazine exist in that book imply to you that the book is pornographic?
No.
Objection. She changed the question.
That it would be inappropriate, but not necessarily pornographic.
I objected. Do you not take my objection or listen to it or make a decision on it?
The question was restated after was interruption, Dr. Miller.
But she changed fundamentally the question. I would like to hear the answer to the first question.
I'm going to
heard
withdraw
dirty
both
magazine.
questions because it's not worth the fuss.
Okay. Are you done, Attorney Siegel?
Pardon me?
Are you done cross-examining?
Yeah, I'm withdrawing the questions. and
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you very much, sir.
I get follow-up, don't I?
You get, okay, you have 2 more minutes added from that, so that's 8 minutes now. But if you go to question, it would take them from your 8 minutes.
So I just had a follow-up question, Mr. Jones, about the FAC part where it's referring students to the Trevor Project, a hotline, and a website. Do you think it's appropriate to be handing students access to a therapist in that way?
No.
Thank you. Also, I assume that you have internet filters on at Terwilliger, is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
Do you think the Trevor Project would be a webpage students can navigate to on their own from the school computers?
I don't know if they'd be able to or not.
Okay, thank you. I'll take my time back.
Thank you. You may be excused.
Thank
Your next witness, you have 7.30 minutes, 7.5.
I thought I was out of time.
I added on.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. I'm out of time globally, but not for witnesses?
No, you're within your hour. Dr. Siegel did her opening statement, so you were given time. The computer went down. I gave you time.
Okay, I just thought that you had told me I had 6 minutes and then counted them down with my last witness. No? So I have how much time left?
You have 7 minutes and a half.
7 minutes?
It's in 30 seconds, yeah. 30. Your next witness.
I guess I'll call Mr. Berry. Hello, Mr. Berry. Welcome back.
Hello, Dr. Marule.
Pleasure to see you again.
Always.
So I know you're the curriculum specialist, is that not correct, for the district?
I'm the K-12 curriculum director, yes.
Okay. So when we're looking at this slide that I have here, the common selection criteria for instructional materials, and I can go back to the other ones, they reference often aligning to the standards and to the curriculum. The overall theme of this book is transgenderism. Can you point to which classroom instruction or curriculum or standard that would be supplemental to and or be explained in classroom instruction by?
Sure, there's not instruction in transgender issues at the elementary level.
So then would you say that the degree to which this material will be supplemented and explained by classroom instruction is 0?
Well, it depends on if that's what your theme is, because there's also required instruction. Statute 1003.42 that talks about students overcoming challenges. So you could look at it that way, but in reality, I think this training is pretty confusing because there are some things that are included that maybe we don't see clearly identified in statute. So I think that, we are going to continue to provide feedback to the DOE about making some adjustments to the training so that we have clear understanding of where this language is in statute, because some of the guidance they provide here, we're not able to find in statute, and our responsibility is to ensure that we're following the language of the statute.
Okay, I understand that you are questioning the training that is mandated to media specialists for selecting criteria, but as it stands, I feel that it's quite clear that any material selected for the library, do you disagree, needs to support the academic standards and curriculum?
The way the slide is presented here, that is what it looks like to me.
Correct, and this is the training that media specialists are required by law to take to enact in their guidance for selection of media for the library. Is that not correct?
That's my understanding, yes. I have not taken the training myself.
Okay, thank you. When you talk about challenges and those types of issues, if a child was having a challenge with transgenderism, would that be something that could be addressed in a classroom discussion?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear the end of your question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, my question is, would that be something, is that a topic, is that one of the challenges that could be addressed in classroom discussion?
About transgender, no, that would not be addressed.
That is my question. So can you say, when we are using the criteria as stipulated in the current law, in the current training that we're obligated to take as media specialists, that this collection or this book, to be part of the collection, to what degree, or how would you say it supports academic standards and curriculum?
So again, I don't know, it depends on what you're looking at. One of the things that we also do is one of the standards talks about reading fluently independently on grade level. So that's why I think that there needs to be some more clarity about what that expectation is in this training. I think that the DOE staff worked really hard to get it out to us as quickly as they could to align with new legislative requirements. But I think that we want to get some more clarification so that we're doing exactly what the expectation was and that we're following the statutory language. So I hear your concern, if we're looking specifically about the nature of, transgender students and their issues that they are confronting, those will not be part of the standards in the elementary grades. There are some things, though, if someone was looking at this from a different perspective, they might be able to find within the grade level standards. Again, I think that's also confusing because typically this has not been part of our selection criteria. It's not in statute as selection criteria, so we need to get some more information.
Okay.
Dr. Moreau, please, let me state. This book that was in discussion is not considered for instructional, nor is it on a reading list. This is particularly pertaining to a library open checkout on the shelf for reading.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's refrain from the instructional or reading list, please. Because we're dealing with the library challenge only.
Yes, ma'am, but this is criteria for selection of library materials. This is the training for selection materials for the library, and they say it needs to support the academic standards and curriculum.
Or,
Yeah,
it's not only for curriculum or books in the library, not on.
wait, I'm sorry.
Let's keep it to the challenge that went through the library. This is a challenge, the form was filled out pertaining to this book being on the library shelves for students to have access for checkout.
Yes, ma'am, and this training speaks specifically to the books that should be selected to sit on the library. All these slides, up to slide 31, are providing the guidelines by the state of selecting materials for those libraries. That is what I'm challenging, those
For the
criteria.
library, but let's refrain from instructional material, please.
But part of the criteria for materials in the library is that it needs to be
That's right,
supportive
but this
of
particular
act-
book is not used for instructional, nor is it on a reading list.
I don't think this is, I'm not a lawyer, but this doesn't seem appropriate, but
But we're
nonetheless.
trying to stick to the reason why we're here, a challenge of a library book.
And it says, criteria for selection of library materials. Collection must support academic standards and curriculum. So to ask which standards and curriculum it supports is completely relevant.
Dr. Jackson?
Yes.
She is arguing with you. She is not accepting your rule. You ruled on this issue, and she needs to move on.
We can go on, but I'm sure Tallahassee is going to have a different interpretation of this. So you can go on the record that you
We're
are
here,
disregarding the
folks.
criteria that is dictated for the selection of library materials.
Dr.
That's
Monroe,
not-
we're here to
Absolutely
make a
inappropriate to make
recommendation
these
to the
kind of
school
threats.
board.
It's not a threat, it's my legal right.
Do you have another witness, because you're 6 minutes, you're 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Well, I'd like Mr. Berry to answer the question that how this book supports academic standards and curriculum. And if it should be selected for the library materials, if it has minimum support of academic standards and curriculum.
Sure, so I thought I answered that, but I'll say again,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I did catch your point before all the interruption about perhaps it applies to ELA standards for fluency or whatnot, and we could make a presentation on if it does. The stakeholder or the peer review did mention that it was written too simplistically for the upper grades, but the content was not appropriate for the younger grades. So even considering the ELA standards, which I'm not presenting here today, would strengthen, I think, the argument for erring on the side of caution to not select the text. But go ahead.
sure, so, I mean, other than what I've already stated, I have no more to add. Again, I think that when we're making sure we're ensuring our materials are accessible to our students, we are checking statutory language. This part is confusing where it talks about supported by standards. I mentioned some others. I also think these are a list of considerations that does not necessarily indicate, of course, I wasn't trained, but it doesn't say that all of these things must be true for all things, because I'm sure there's kind of levels of support for each of them. But again, I think that if we are looking at what standards there could be associated with it, required instruction talks about others' diverse viewpoints, talks about challenges. We look at fluently reading at an independent level. Again, I think that probably there are a lot of nonfiction texts that consideration is more connected with, but that's really all I have to say on that matter.
Mr. Berry, so if I can just summarize, I think what you're saying is that not any one single criterion should be sufficient perhaps for not selecting.
Dr. Monroe, you cannot summarize his statement.
Yes or no? Would multiple approaches to evaluating the selection criteria be necessary to dictate if a book is acceptable or not? And are these not the considerations that should be taken into consideration?
So it says must, right? So that means we have to look at all of those bullet points. But I think for each of those musts, there may be some variation to the extent. Supporting academic standards and curriculum, there might be some that support it a little bit, there might be some that support it a lot, but we're not able to say that this particular book is not supported in any way. I don't think so, because of the reading independently, because of the challenges. Having said that, I think that when we're looking at nonfiction texts, we would probably, if this is our criteria, really be more careful to look at the content of those texts.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Attorney Siegel, would you like to cross-examine the witness?
Yeah, just briefly. Let me ask you to assume that there is a book in the library at a lot of libraries around the school district entitled Ghosts. And let me ask you to assume that Ghosts is highly read, one of the top 3 books checked out throughout the whole school system. Are you aware of any supplementation of a book about ghosts to classroom instruction?
I object. I'm not sure of the legal term, but I know this is conjecture or hypothesis or something. It's not relevant to this text that we're applying this criteria to.
I find it ironic that she would spend a lot of time on supplementation of classroom instruction by one book, but would object to it by another.
I'm objecting to the hypothetical book.
Shouldn't be interrupting people. That's extremely rude. Please do not do it again.
I object.
If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Thank you. Attorney Siegel, would you like to readdress that question too?
Do you know of any supplementation for classroom instruction that a book about ghosts would have?
Objection, irrelevant.
Go ahead, sir.
I do not know of any standards aligns with the content of Go.
Ma'am,
Okay.
I object.
Let-
Don't you need to rule on my objection?
Thank you. Sustain.
Thank you.
You're sustaining the objection?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you to assume that the Harry Potter series is the fourth most checked out books in any classroom, in any school library in the county.
Objection, irrelevant. That is not the book that we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss Melissa, formerly known as George.
We're also here to discuss supplementation to instruction, and I think it's appropriate to point out that not all books in the library are necessarily supplemental to specific instruction.
Thank you. Go ahead. Overrule. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Do you know of any classroom instruction that the Harry Potter series would be supplemental to?
I do not.
The final one is, let me ask you to assume that one of the favorite books, if not the second most favorite, is the Guinness Book of World Records. Do you know of any?
Objection. I am not challenging Harry Potter. I am not challenging the Guinness Book of World Record, and I would appreciate it if we would focus this hearing on the book that's being challenged and its merits according to the selection criteria.
Dr. Murrow, I think it's trying to bring the fact that all books in the library are not instructional.
That is the point. There was lots of questions about
Objection.
supplementation.
Ma'am, objection.
Overrule.
Can I have a conversation with you for a minute? Or this seems unclear. We are talking about selection for library materials. You keep saying I'm saying instructional. I'm
You
saying
brought up
library.
instructional, so the attorney on the district side is not clarifying with the supervisor of curriculum what the differences are.
But this challenge is not about instructional materials.
It's
about
not, but
library
Dr.
materials.
Marul, you brought the instructional material into where I had to explain we were here for the library.
No, ma'am,
So-
you misinterpreted what I said.
Excuse me, Dr.
I
Murrow.
argued that it doesn't meet the criteria for selection for the library based on the fact that it has to support standards and curriculum.
Excuse me. Do we have any other witness so I can adjourn this hearing, please?
I do have to present Ms. Duval, but I will wait until Dr. Marul is finished with her side of the case.
Well, Dr. Marul has used her time up. She's out of time.
Then
So I
other
was
than
allowing you
having-
to cross-examine Gare,
Mr. Berry.
Okay, I will.
Mr. Berry.
Then I
So-
will just ask Mr. Berry to answer the question as to whether he is aware of any supplementation of classroom instruction that the book Guinness Book of World Records would have.
I'm not aware of anything that will be connected to. Again, I think there's some big differences between narrative and non-fictional texts when it comes to that. And I think that, having those resources that students are interested in gets them to read more, which is aligned with statutes regarding reading independently.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions of you. And may this witness be
Yeah,
excused?
Mr. Berry, you may be excused. The time has expired for the petitioner side. At this time, we will open for the respondent. Attorney Siegel, you may call your witness.
I was going to call Ms. Harbor, but I'm going to release her because, are you okay? Okay. I will call Ms. Harbor then. Heather Harbor.
We will begin your, okay, let me start your time.
Let me find my notes quickly. Well, I think I remember. Would you tell Dr. Jackson who you are and what you do for a living? And how long have you been principal there? And what did you do before you became principal?
Sorry. Prior to being an assistant principal, I was the supervisor for staff development here at the district office. I've been a mentor coach for other teachers throughout the district, K-12, and prior to that, I was a classroom teacher.
Okay. And Dr. Marul made an objection to the book Melissa, and that objection was sent to you, correct?
Yes, it was.
Did you convene a committee to evaluate the book?
Yes, we did.
Who was on the committee?
We had a parent representative, a teacher representative, an assistant principal in lieu of a counselor because that was a vacant position at the time. We had our media specialist, and Patty Duval facilitated the meeting, and I was also on the committee.
And Ms. Duval is the district media specialist, correct?
Correct.
And she did not have voting rights in that particular.
That's correct.
Okay. Tell us what happened at that meeting.
Prior to the meeting, we all had access to the book to read it because it is a chapter book, and so it wouldn't have been appropriate to spend that much time reading the book during the actual meeting. Then during the meeting, Ms. Duval went over statutory requirements around media selection criteria. We had the opportunity to review professional reviews and all give input around the table as to our input on the book based on those statutory requirements. We then voted using the forms that were provided.
And what was the vote?
The vote was to continue to keep the book in the media center.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you have any questions?
How much time do I have to ask this witness questions?
Your time, you have a rebuttal, but you're pulling away from time from the defendant, so I have to add time to them, to the respondent. As you speak, time will be added to theirs.
Okay, but I can ask questions?
You could take time for a reasonable amount of time, so.
Thank you, Ms. Harbour, for coming here today. And I appreciate all the work you do at Terwilliger for our students, and I'm grateful for you. I just want to do a little housekeeping. It keeps being brought up that you have the school level review. Had I attended the school level review, would I have been able to share my thoughts or speak at all?
No, it's my understanding that there's no public input.
So is there really any difference if I show up or stay at home and wait for the result?
That's your decision.
Correct. Thank you. What's the average age of a fifth grader in Terwilliger?
I would have to run numbers to give you an exact average, but it's probably around the age of 10 to 11 years old.
Do you have any 13-year-olds in Terwilliger?
I believe our oldest student is 12.
Okay. So do you think it's appropriate to be giving them a resource that would let them access a counselor directly by themselves?
I believe that this book meets the statutory requirements, and that was not a part of the decision.
But my question is, in the back of the book, there's a phone number and a website that directs students to counselors and can be connected with counselors. Is it appropriate to hand out content in the school that would allow a student direct access to a counselor?
We do that in other ways with adults on our campus. I am not familiar with the resource in the back of the book, so it is hard for me to answer whether that particular counselor would be appropriate or not.
I mean, do you want me to show you the slide, or I can hand you the book and you can look at it?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm not familiar with what the resource provides.
But when you say there are other people at school who can facilitate access to counselors, I'm assuming there's a parent or a guardian there present as this information is being conveyed. It's not given to a child. Is that correct?
We have counselors work with students without parents present,
But with parental permission?
sometimes, not always.
Do you have counselors working with children without parental permission?
We have a counselor on site that works with students daily, now that we filled that vacancy, yes.
But they wouldn't be providing therapy to a student without parent permission, would they?
Our counselor consults with students daily, sometimes without receiving formal consent from a parent. We all work with the students on a daily basis.
Dr. Moreau, excuse me, that's a public interest. You can deal with the principal later on that issue,
Well,
please.
it's relevant to the question that I'm getting at, because this book is handing over to a child, no one older than the age of 13, which is the age of consent for working with a therapist in the state of Florida without parental consent, and they're handing the information to students in the school on a school-endorsed material of how to access a counselor. And to me, it violates the state statute, and I'm
I
asking...
do not have that in my book.
It's at the back of the book.
I've just reviewed it. Anyway, let's move on with the questioning. It may be in yours. I don't have it in this hardback here.
And
We have time.
I'd remind you that the rule about an hour each does not mean that I would give her any of my time.
Right, I'm adding to you, but it's delaying the issue.
reached her hour, she should be done.
What is that, question and answer?
You don't have these pages
Yeah,
in your
I have
book?
question and answer.
That's what I'm referring to,
But the
ma'am.
phone number is in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Let me see that.
I haven't gone back to the question and answers.
Traditional to show.
Okay, we're pulling from the time,
I'm looking at the book myself, Dr. Marule. If I could see what's in your book, I would appreciate it.
I don't see the number, that's. Continue, Dr. Mavrou.
Well, let me share it for the audience too, because if you weren't aware of it and the counterparty wasn't aware of it, let me just show it on the slide so everyone who's paying attention can be aware of it too.
I would tell you that, Dr. Jackson, that this book appears to be a book that is for others than just students, because there's an area in the back called frequently asked questions. And
Is it
that
not
has,
in your book?
excuse me, ma'am, please do not interrupt me when I'm
Well,
talking.
you seem to interrupt me quite a bit, so I think what's
Ma'am,
good for the
ma'am.
goose is good for the gander.
Excuse me, we're trying to get through this hearing as much as we possibly can.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have one more witness, so please.
This is not the book that's in our library. I don't know where she got this book. It's scholastic. It may be used for teaching, but is afterwards, it's called, and the contents are not in the books that the children would read.
Can you check,
would-
may I see your book and see if it's in your book?
It's there, but it's frequently asked questions. It's
Miss
not-
Bessie said it's there. I'll
But
take
it's
her ruling.
frequently asked questions, but not the information of the numbers.
She must have a different version. So I would like to know which specific book was shared with you, which specific book
Well,
was
mine
in
is
the
from the
library.
library. It's a catalog library district book.
Then I'd like to see it, please.
Libraries.
Thank you, Dee. Yes, it is in this book. So, Ms. Jackson, is that the book from the library?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Then this is my challenge to this book. And I'll go back to my question, Ms. Harbour. Ms. Harbour, my question is it appropriate for a school to hand out documentation or any kind of literature, be it in a book, be it in a pamphlet, be it in a text, to a student that allows them direct access to a counselor without parental consent?
I do not have any concerns about that information being in a book or accessible via the internet or accessible via a child's cell phone. They have much access to counselors all over the place, regardless of
should it
whether or
be-
not it was in a book that was rarely, if ever, checked out from our library.
I agree that children have access to all sorts of materials, but I also agree that it is the school duty to protect children. And my question is, according to the Florida Statute 394.47H, which says the age for any minor to have access to a therapy or counseling service is 13 and older in a crisis, and even then, it can't go on for more than a 1-week period without a parent's involvement. And my question is, you seem to be okay with handing that out on school-endorsed material. Is that correct?
It is not in violation of the selection criteria put in statute, in Florida statute. So yes, that is correct.
But it violates a different Florida statute.
It does not violate media selection criteria statute.
Dr. Miro, do you have any other questions for this witness, please?
Give me a moment. Would a student be able to navigate to the Trevor project from the school computer?
I don't know.
Okay. What level movies can be shown to students in Terwilliger without parental permission?
Objection.
You didn't object to Harry Potter. It's a similar premise.
This is, you said what movies can be shown to students without parent permission?
Correct.
That was not the same as the question of a book being in the library without being related to the curriculum.
It
Two
has to
different
do
things.
with- It has to do with what we expose children to.
Dr.
in the
Muro,
environment.
I'm objecting to that, please.
Well, I don't know if you're allowed to object either. I think that has to come from the attorney, but I'll rest.
The objection, if that will make you happy.
It makes me a little happier. Thank you. All right, well, I'm done. Thank you.
You have any questions? Thank you.
May she excuse?
Yes, you excuse.
Leave.
Dr. Attorney Siegel, do you have any other witness?
Just Patty Duval, please.
Ms. Duval, please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Duval. Will you tell us all your name and what is your position with the county?
My name is Patty Duval, and I am the District Media Specialist.
How long have you been in that position?
I have been the District Media Specialist officially for 2 years.
And what did you do for the district before that?
Before that, I was an instructional technology coach and a school library media specialist.
Okay. And you are certified as a media specialist,
I am,
correct?
yes.
Yes. And you are I think we've been told already by one of the witnesses that you are the facilitator for the book challenges, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you facilitated this one both at the school and district level, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You did not vote at the school level, but you voted at the district level.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm not going to go through all of your PowerPoints. At the district level, who was involved in the evaluation of this book?
Myself, Mr. Berry, Dr. Tony Griffin, who was our student services supervisor, Mr. John Rem, who is our curriculum specialist, and a parent. I think it was Ms. Rayner, I think, was the parent for this challenge.
Did you explain the statutory basis for objection to them?
I did.
You showed them a PowerPoint,
I did.
and it contained some of the statutes also?
Yes, ma'am.
You explained the library selection criteria.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we've heard an awful lot of fussing
Right.
about,
Objection. It's not fussing. It's presenting the criteria and asking that it be applied.
we've heard a lot of argument from Dr. Marule about supplementation of library materials to classroom instructions. Can you talk a little bit about that standard and what it means?
I can. So according to State Statute 1006.28, library materials, the selection criteria for library materials must meet the criteria established in 1006.403D, which is really 3C. And that indicates that it must be free of pornography, suited to the student's needs and their ability to comprehend the material, and appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials are made available.
What about the issue of whether it's supplemental to classroom instruction? Let me ask you this. In terms of selection of a book merely for the library, not to be used in class, not to be on a reading list, but merely to be available in the library for a child to check it out if they wish.
Right,
And if their parent did not object to that specific book going out.
correct.
Okay, I'd like you to tell us, are all the books in the library necessarily supplemental to classroom instruction?
No, library materials are purchased and made available to students to select freely and read independently.
What does it mean to be supplemental to classroom instruction?
So that means that a teacher is going to use that material in their classroom as part of their instruction.
But it's not expected that every library book will be supplemental in that way in terms of actual instruction, correct?
Correct.
You heard me ask Mr. Berry some questions about books. At my request, did you look to see how many places the book Melissa is available in library to students?
I did.
How many places is it available?
There are 8 copies available in the district.
How many elementary schools and how many secondary, middle schools?
That I did not actually check that to be sure. I just know there are 8 copies available, but they are I know it's in at least 3 elementary schools.
Do you have a list of your,
Do I I did not bring that list. I'm so sorry.
Okay, then I'll let you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, good, okay.
Was this entered into exhibits as evidence? I don't recall receiving a copy.
It's not an exhibit, it's just her
No.
it's what her testimony is based on.
So it is in
So-
1, 2,
So Alachua Elementary has how many books?
1.
How many times has that book been checked out? Well, when was it first in the library?
This book was purchased for Alachua Elementary in 2019.
And was it, how many times has it been checked out?
10.
Compared to the number of times all books in the Alachua Elementary Library have been checked out, how many times have all books been checked out in that library?
Well, the comparison was only that against fiction titles and not nonfiction titles, but it was 0.08%.
So when you say 0.08%,
Right.
you are meaning 8/100ths
Right.
of 1%, correct? It's not 8%.
Right.
8/100ths of a percent.
Right. 0.08.
Okay, how about the next school on your list?
So there is one title at Pine Springs Elementary that was acquired in 2021, and it has been checked out 4 times. In Appahaw Middle School, there are 2 copies. It was acquired in 2021. It's been checked out 18 times. Kimball Wiles Elementary, there's 1 copy available. It was purchased in 2019, and it has been checked out 12 times. Rawlings Elementary has 1 copy. It's been checked out once. Terwilliger has 1 copy. It's been checked out 3 times. Oakview Middle School has 2 copies. It's been checked out twice. And Westwood Middle School has 1 copy, and it's been checked out 5 times.
Have any of the times this book's been checked out been greater than 1% of the time?
No.
Okay. Does that indicate to you that although there may be some interest in this book, there's not a great deal of interest?
Correct.
The committee, as we've heard, had voted to keep the book on the shelf, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
At the district level.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, Dr. Marule requested it come to the hearing level, correct?
Correct.
I want to go on to something that you just recently did.
Okay.
You recently had a meeting in Tallahassee with the state education folks regarding media specialist issues, correct?
I did.
Would you tell us what the meeting was about?
Certainly. I was part of a legislative group that represented the Florida Association for Media and Education, which is our professional organization for school library media specialists. We work with a lobbyist that set up some appointments for us where we sat down with several different legislators to share 5 specific concerns that we have regarding legislation and school library materials. And then one of those meetings that they had set up for us was with the Department of Education.
Okay. What was the first of the 5 concerns that you were discussed?
The first concern has to do with student access and parent permission. Based on HB 1069, it said that the school district must provide on their school website an avenue for which parents to limit their child's access to school library materials. Our concern was that because is that some districts have decided to make access to school libraries an opt-in instead of an opt-out.
What does that mean?
That means that parents must sign a permission slip before their children can go to the library and check out a library book.
Okay, and opt-out means?
An opt-out means that, you know, you can opt out so that your child doesn't go to the library.
Well, is it what we've heard about lately? If Dr. Marule chose for her child not to read Melissa,
Correct.
she would contact you all
She would
and you'd
complete
make
the
sure
form.
the child could not check it out.
That is correct.
Okay. What was the second concern you raised?
That as far as book removal, the part of the legislation that says that if a parent reads a book aloud in a school board meeting, and if they're reading from the text of a book that there is an objection for, if they are not given the full 3 minutes to read their passage and they are asked to stop reading, then that book must automatically be removed. And we asked that that procedure be cleared up, and that if that is the case, that instead of the book being automatically removed, that it be moved to the top of the objection list and go through the due process.
Okay.
Can I just object for a second? We have established criteria by law and training that's current What could happen, might happen, will happen is irrelevant to my arguments and to the case about this
Dr.
book.
Marule, you will get a chance to.
But I'm objecting to the line of reasoning.
Okay.
The relevance, it's not relevant.
Overruled for this is pertaining to how it would be presented to the board.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you
Excuse
clarify?
me, Dr. Marule. Continue, Attorney.
Okay, Ms. Duval,
Our
so
third,
you were concerned about due process in terms of whether a book should be removed automatically without any input from other sides? Okay. What was your third concern?
the third one was separate the training. In 2022, the state passed HB 1467, which required media specialists to watch a training video created by the Florida Department of Education. The current video is intended for both school media specialists and those responsible for purchasing textbooks and
Excuse me,
other
objection.
curricular
How is
items.
she able to read her response? Did she know in advance what her question would be?
I just want to make sure I get all the facts.
That's
So-
all right. She can read if she has prepared for however she wants to answer.
But does it mean that she knew the answers in a question?
No, it does not.
Are you
Attorney,
sure?
Dr. Marule, let's continue, please.
It says that, so our concern was that the current video is intended for both media specialists and those responsible for purchasing textbooks and other curricular items. Two very distinct groups. We believe that there should be two separate training videos, and in order to prevent confusion, the Florida Association of Media and Education does not believe that this was the intent of the bill. The goal would be to clarify the intent with the Department of Education.
Okay. How about the fourth?
To set restrictions on the number of times parent can place objections to books.
And why was that a concern?
In the fiscal year of 2022-2023, 1,218 objections were filed in the state of Florida to school library books, which resulted in the removal of 386 books.
Okay. And were those books, where were those books
So
specific?
over half of the objections came from Clay County, where they objected to 489 books and 177 were removed, and Escambia County, where they objected to 215 books and 9 were removed.
What was your recommendation to the committee about how to handle book challenge objections?
I'm sorry.
Did you have a request that there be a change in how the objections were handled?
Yes, we did. Well, there is current legislation in place, HB 7025, which will propose that a parent who is objecting to material at a school that their child does not attend, or a resident who is objecting to school library materials, if they've objected to more than 5 books in a calendar year, that they're charged a $100 filing fee for any
Objection,
future
again,
objection.
relevance. We're under current criteria, and I'm challenging the book under current criteria. It doesn't matter what will happen. What is the relevance? It hasn't passed.
Dr.
It's
Jackson,
sharing a lobbyist's perspective. What is the
have you
relevance?
finished your objection yet? Okay. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to make sure you didn't have anything more to say.
I really appreciate
Dr.
it.
Jackson, you did have more to say, Miss Dr. Marule. Dr. Jackson, this establishes the credibility and background and veracity of this witness who has been attacked a number of times before. And I think I'm entitled to let the court know her background and what her concerns are that specifically relate to these areas.
Objection. I find it, are we here to establish character? Because I was
No,
called
Dr.
a
Mar-
racist
Dr.
by the
Marule,
school board for
Dr.
my
Marule.
challenge with
Ms.
no
Ms.
foundation.
Duval is Director of Media Services for the District of Alachua County. She is the authority of what goes on those shelves. Please let her speak.
But she is subjugate to the law and the statute and the criteria and training. And that is what I'm challenging. I'm not challenging what her title or position is. I recognize her position. I'm challenging that she's not applying the state criteria as dictated.
Thank you. Go.
May I proceed?
Proceed, please.
Finally, what is the last of your concerns that you expressed to the board, the state group?
We asked, I'll take that out. As far as the special magistrate is concerned, parents who have an issue with the book being removed without having gone through due process, that there is no avenue for them to place an objection based on the procedure that was involved in removing that book. And so we asked for some avenue to be created or some clarification made.
Okay, thank you. Now, the only objections on Dr. Marul's objection form were the material was not suited to the student needs or ability to comprehend, and 2, that the material is inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which it's used.
Correct.
The book is not used for instructional purposes, correct?
Correct.
Nor is it on a recommended reading list, correct?
Objection, irrelevant, that wasn't my challenge.
Continue.
Thank you, ma'am. It is available in the library at a school, at a number of schools for a student to check out, correct?
Correct.
We've gone through the numbers of schools. So I won't do that again. You heard me ask Mr. Berry about the questions. What is the most checked out book in the county?
So right now, that is the book Ghosts. It is a graphic novel. I forget what it's about.
Challenge or objection, again, she knew the questions before she showed up if she has the information. Is that how this works? I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds
Dr.
really
Marule.
fishy to me.
Dr. Marule, I'm not aware of her having any information.
How does she know to be able to answer
I
that
can't,
question?
I have no speculation on that.
Well, I would like
have.
to speculate.
Dr. Jackson, I will
Please.
let her know what the general rule is with respect to asking witnesses. Good lawyers always talk to their witnesses ahead of time and make sure that they know the answers. You've obviously heard lawyer shows on TV that says never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I'm trying to be a good lawyer and just ask questions that I know she can answer, and that's what I'm doing. So
I appreciate that, but I just want to point out the bias process here going on, because I have no authority to call witnesses except for to ask them to show up. The district says, hey, we want you to show up, and of course, because the district is their boss, they're going to show up. So there is definitely, unless I have subpoena power that I'm not aware of, this seems like a very biased process, and I just want the record to note.
actually, she does have subpoena power.
I've
But-
asked that question multiple times, and you never told me that.
I beg your pardon,
Please,
ma'am. I have not, and
thank you.
please
Can we
do not argue and waste my time and yours. Thank you.
I can show you the emails where I asked that.
I can.
Dr. Mabille, let's continue. Go ahead.
May I finish?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the goal of a school media specialist to get kids reading?
Yes, ma'am.
The kids generally read things they want to read
Yes, ma'am.
more readily than things that are assigned to them.
Correct.
Now, Dr. Marule has been very critical of the use of the word porn
Right.
in the book Melissa. Are you aware of any pornographic scenes in that book?
No, ma'am.
Do you have an opinion as to the word porn without any specific incidence of pornography is prohibited under Florida law?
No, ma'am.
Okay. She's also critical of the words dirty magazine that's used in the book. Is the use of the words dirty magazine without knowing showing what is in a dirty magazine or what's contemplated by that, is that something that's forbidden under Florida law?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Does a parent have the right in Alachua Public Schools to prohibit their child from reading a text if the parent does not want the child to read that?
Correct.
Does a parent also have the right in the Alachua Public Schools to have their child read any book that child wants to read in the library?
Yes.
And that's within the Parents' Rights Statute also.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
You rest, Attorney Seeger, you're done questioning Ms. Duval. Okay. Dr. Murrow,
Right. So my first question is, you've made a big deal about the circulation habits, which are 0.08%. And I just want to highlight that part of your duty as a media specialist is the removal and discontinuance of materials from the library. And one of the considerations for that would be the circulation data. And I would argue a book that has less than 1% circulation data is probably not appropriate for the library and should be filtered out on those grounds alone. So thank you for making that argument for me, Ms. Siegel. I appreciate that. I would like now to also address. I'm sorry, is that not the removal or discontinuance of material consideration, Ms. Duval?
Yes, but we allow up to 5 years before we remove a book because of lack of circulation. And due to the pandemic and the fact that we had such limited circulation for that period of time, we kind of have extended it. So, so we do remove materials for lack of circulation with the proper data.
I anticipate seeing that on a removal of circulation list shortly, since it was adopted in 2019, and that's been 6 years.
And again, due to the pandemic, right? Due to the pandemic, we extended that time.
By how much?
It just depends on the situation, but, I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule. The state, the law does not tell us what time frame we have to look at. So as a general rule, we look at 5 years. May it be less, maybe more. It depends on the book, it depends on the situation. But as a district, we decided that we would not make it a hard and fast rule of 3 to 5 years because of the pandemic.
Can you tell me what I have on the screen there?
No, excuse me, Dr. Memorial, this is not going to be your presentation. Only questions to readdress what the respondent has asked. Only readdress, please.
So
Cross-examination.
my question is there a current library media instructional materials training dictated by law that you are supposed to adhere to in this year, 2023-2024?
Yes, there is.
And is it by law, House Bill 1467, that you should do this training and you should apply this training to the selection of library materials?
All media specialists are required to watch the training before they are allowed to select library materials, yes.
Sorry, the computer's not showing again that.
Are you cross-examining questions
I really
that
don't-
came from the respondent?
Training says.
Fine.
Not for your presentation. Questions that came from the respondent, you can cross-examine, but not
My
ask
question
her.
is extremely relevant because what we're here,
Only questions that have come forth from the respondent that you cross-examine.
on what grounds did I challenge this text?
Age appropriateness and if the student has the ability to comprehend the material.
And is it true, according to the training, that media specialists should consider factors such as the degree to which the material will be supplemental or explained by classroom instruction, the educational purpose of the material with priority given to materials aligned to the state standards, as well as the accurate portrayal of the state's broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural diversity without bias or indoctrination? Media specialists should also consider student interest and the needs of their specific school populations when choosing materials.
Correct?
So, 23-24 academic year, are you not tasked with applying these considerations with the selection of library material?
That slide says factors should. It does not say those are requirements.
Agreed. So you should take into consideration, am I right? You should take into consideration all of these points when you select a text.
No.
How should you apply these considerations?
Dr. Marule, was that a question brought forth from the respondent in selection criteria?
I'm trying to determine.
No, we're cross-examining right now, not presentation. Is that a question that was brought forth from the respondent?
Yes, because she brought forth the connection with instructional materials and reading lists, and I'm pointing to the fact that this has to do with library material selection and what the state statute says for criteria.
But that does it direct address a question that she brought forth?
The question, well, I don't have the list of the questions, they
I
weren't sent
thought
to
you were
me.
writing so you would have a response.
I have notes of certain things, but
But I'm saying when she was asking her
my
question.
general question is if Ms. Duval is applying the current criteria to the selection of media content.
I am.
Are you applying these considerations?
No, I am not.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You may be excused,
I'm
Mr.
not done. I wasn't done.
Dr. Jackson,
Yes,
she was allowed 1 hour, not 1 hour and a half.
we're on your time now.
But she's taking out of my time, and that's not
Fine,
allowed.
I'll rest, it's fine.
She should have no more time at all.
All right, Dr. Duval, thank
Those
you.
are the rules.
Thank you.
Okay. Closing statements. Attorney Segal, I'm going to let you go with your closing statement. We're on your time, and then I'll make a final statement.
Okay. I have nothing much more to say other than I'm very disconcerted by the judgmental statements that have been made in this room today. Anyone that disagrees with her should be fired. If someone disagrees with her, their parental judgment needs to be recalibrated. That is extremely judgmental and inappropriate. Most of her complaints today are based on her own beliefs. Others have differing opinions and differing beliefs. This book is not different than language for a lot of children use with each other. I'm also disconcerted by the use here and in various places today in our society of the word indoctrination. I looked it up in the dictionary, and it means teaching or inculcation repeatedly and frequently to instill beliefs, frequently of a specific topic. Having a child read a book in the library is not indoctrination. Indoctrination is when child are only permitted to read certain books and not any other books that Dr. Marule disapproves of. I would suggest that this book should be left on the shelf. She's certainly welcome to have her child not read it. We'll be happy to make sure, but she should not be permitted to make decisions for other people's children. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing. Dr. Marule, short, please.
Well, if Ms. Siegel was offended by my opening statement, she's sure going to be offended by my closing statement. I want to say, and I want to reiterate, this has nothing to do with my personal opinion. I have tried time and time again to redirect everyone's attention to the state-mandated selection criteria for library materials and to apply them objectively to the text. Everyone on the other side keeps trying to take this conversation away from applying the criteria as dictated in state statutes. But I will bring it back to the state statutes. This is not my personal opinion. This is my professional interpretation as a certified media specialist, that this is the training, these are the guidelines, and this is the way it should be applied objectively to this text, irregardless of your personal opinions. That being said, I would just reiterate that no book that normalizes 10-year-olds and 14-year-olds using, discussing, laughing about, knowledgeable about pornography or dirty magazines is appropriate in the K-5 environment. And any administrator that says that this topic of pornography is appropriate to be introduced in the K-5 environment should be fired and kept away from children. And to quote Ms. Tina Certain from our school board last week, we kind of have to all stand up against that. And to quote another wise but probably lesser known person to this room, but if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. And I will close with that.
Thank you. That concludes our hearing. Now we will render a recommended order and will be submitted to the school board. Each party will receive a copy of my recommended order. The school board at a regular business meeting will make the final determination as to the disposition of this case. Dr. Murrell, you have an opportunity to attend the school board meeting and speak on this item at that board meeting. You have the right to submit objections to the school board prior to that meeting. If you have any objections to my recommendation. Are there any questions from either party? Hearing none.
Can I ask, how do I object to the school board before that meeting? What do you mean by an objection?
In writing.
What's the vehicle? Just an email?
I'm not sure. I would make a call to the superintendent's office secretary.
appreciate
What's
that.
her name that takes the minutes
Johnson?
for the board?
Jackie Johnson?
No, not her. Ms. Muir wanted to know how would she make her objections to the school board prior to the meeting?
If as she did this time, if she wishes, she took your proposed order and inserted her comments after each of the prongs of your final determinations.
So you believe that was the appropriate way to do it? Is that the protocol? I'm asking, I don't know.
I'm not sure what the protocol, I just know you have the right to object prior to the meeting in writing.
And Dr. Jackson, I can continue. I wasn't quite done.
Okay.
That is one way to do it. She does not have to do her objections before the meeting. She can come to the school board meeting and discuss it with the school board members at that time. There will be public input before they make that decision.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If no other statements, no other questions, this meeting is adjourned. This hearing, I'm sorry.